All right, guys, welcome to video number 2, and let's start off here with number 11. So, again, I notice some absolute value bars. So my first goal, even though it's an inequality, is still to get the bars alone. So to do that, the 6 is chilling out in the front and is not attached. Because the 6 is positive, the first thing I want to do is subtract the 6 to the other side. So please don't drop that negative. We would have negative 4 times the absolute value of 2x minus 2 is less than or equal to negative 40. Again, just like the equation absolute value problem, we cannot distribute the negative 4 in, but rather get the bars away, or get them alone, by dividing by negative 4. Now, like the other inequality examples, when we divide by a negative, we have to flip this sign. So this becomes the absolute value of 2x minus 2 is greater than or equal to positive 10. And again, just like the previous absolute value one, we need two different situations because the number in here could originally be positive or negative to come out as a positive distance. Now, one difference is because it's an absolute value, we need to consider, because it's an absolute value with an inequality, we need to consider if it's an and or an or problem. So some of you might remember my memory tricks, great or less than. Because this inequality now when flipped says greater, I know that this is an or problem. So I'm going to put an or right in the middle of my two options. Either 2x minus 2 is exactly as you see it, greater than or equal to 10, or, again, this does not change in here, 2x minus 2. If I change this to a negative 10, not only does the sign change, because the sign changed, the inequality has to flip. So my second option is less than or equal to negative 10. So if I were to solve this first one, if I added the 2, I would get 2x is greater than or equal to 12. So apologies about the room here, I'll write it over here. From this, if I divided both sides by 2, I would get x is greater than or equal to 6, or this equation, if I added the 2, and then I divided by this 2, you would get x is less than or equal to negative 4. So this is my answer algebraically. Graphically, if I put 0 in the middle, here's 6, here's negative 4. X is greater than or equal to negative 6, has a closed dot on 6 towards the greater than or towards infinity. And then this portion, x is less than or equal to negative 4, has another closed dot on negative 4, but is going the opposite direction. So here is my answer graphically. Number 12, however, is such a much quicker problem than 11, because if I want to get these absolute value bars alone, I'm going to subtract 11 on both sides. So I'd have the absolute value of x minus 2 is greater than negative 5. Now, here's the difference between 12 and 11. After I got the bars alone, I had a positive distance right here. So I could keep going and make my two equations or inequalities. But this time, I have a negative distance, which gives me pause. And so I think about again what this means. Absolute value means distance. And so I have the statement, distance is greater than a negative number. Or distance is always positive, so you have the statement, a positive is greater than a negative number. Well, is a positive number always bigger than a negative number? Yes. This statement is always true. So my answer is all real numbers, and so my number line would be completely filled in from left to right. I wanted to do 12 to remind you of yet again another unusual situation we've been dealing with off and on all year. Number 13 is asking you to write the equation of either the inequality or the equation based on the graph. Because number 13 has shading, I know it really should be an inequality. Now, I didn't write that on your packet because I didn't want to give it away to you too much, but this technically should say inequality. Here is my line. It looks like it hits the x-axis here at negative 5, so my equation has to be x something negative 5. The shading is towards the positives, so x is greater than But because my line is filled in, it has to be greater than or equal to -5. That's the equation of what I see in 13. 14, there's no shading, so it's just an equation. And so we need to write these in y equals mx plus b if we can. I notice that the y-intercept, if I do y equals mx plus b, I notice that the y-intercept is -3. The slope, we're going down and then over, down 2 over 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So my slope, rise over run, is down 2 over 5x. So this would be the equation of my picture above. Graph the following lines or inequalities. We use whichever method you think is best to graph, and don't forget shading for the inequality. So 15 here does have an inequality symbol, so we're going backwards from the ones we just did. This time we want to start up 2, and then from here go down 1, 2, 3, 4 over 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You can do that as many times as you need. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now, because the inequality does not have a line underneath, this line is dotted. So make sure you're connecting your dots with a dotted line. Mine could be straighter, but the point hopefully is getting across. In terms of the shading, because I have a greater than symbol, I have to shade above my line. So some of you might automatically be thinking that it's going to be shaded here, and I do agree with you. But if you would like to check a different way, remember you could plug in 0, 0 in here and see if it works or not. So we could take this point and see if it works. So if I plug 0 in for y, we'd have y is greater than -4/5 times 0 plus 2. -4/5 times 0 is 0. So you'd end up with the statement 0 is greater than 2. This statement is false, which means that this point does not work, which means I have to shade on the opposite side of 0, 0 in this case. Number 16, if I wanted to graph this line, it's not an inequality this time, just a line, I could do one of two things. I could either use the cover-up method with x and y intercepts. So if I wanted to find the x-intercept, I could say -3x equals -18. So the x-intercept is 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, or really 6, 0. I could then say that the y-intercept is 6y equals -18, because we cover this up because it's really 0. So y would be -3. So then 1, 2, 3. So my line should look something like this. Now, if you're obsessive on tests and like to do things more than one way, or want to check yourself, or just like a different way, here's another way you could attempt number 16. Like we've been doing a lot more recently, you could get y alone. You could add the 3x to both sides. 6y equals 3x minus 18. You divide everything by 6 and get the equation y equals 3/6 reduces to 1/2 x, 8/6 reduces to 3. So you could do this also, and just to check it, if I started down 3 and then went up 1 over 2, up 1 over 2, up 1 over 2, it seems very reasonable to me. Either way is correct. Number 17, find the value of r so that the line through the points 8, 6 and -4, r has a slope of -3/4. As soon as I see that word slope, I think about how to find it. Rise over run, or y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. Now remember, if this is my first point, this is x1 and y1. If this is my second point, this is x2 and y2. So let's plug and chug, because this is also my m. So my slope is 3/4. So I'd have 3/4 equals y2 is r, y1 is 6, x2 is -4, x1 is -8. So if I bring this work up here and simplify this denominator, I would have 3/4 equals r minus 6 over -12. Just like one of the problems on the front of this packet, if I have a fraction equaling a fraction, the diagonals are equal when you multiply. So you'd have 4 times r minus 6, and that cross multiplication would get you 3 times negative 12, which is negative 36. You can solve this 2 ways from here. Some of you might want to distribute and get 4r minus 24 equals negative 36. Add the 24 on both sides. 4r equals negative 12. And so this way you would get r equals negative 3, which is the correct answer. I do want to remind some of you at this point, though, actually from here, is if you wanted to at this stage, if I wrote it again up here, if you were at this stage and you happen to notice that instead of distributing, you could divide both sides by 4, you would have r minus 6 equals negative 9. Add the 6. So either way, your answer is negative 3. It's based on whichever one you like and whichever one you see first. Number 18. In 1990, the population of a small town in Iowa was 7,000 people. However, in the year 2010, the population boomed to 13,750 people. Find the rate of change from 1990 to 2010. Now remember, rate of change is a sneaky way to say the same thing as the previous problem, the slope, because on a graph, that is what is constantly changing indeed. So this one's just asking you to find the slope. And in order to find the slope, we need 2 points. So let's grab those points, shall we? In 1990, the population in Iowa was 7,000, or in the small town in Iowa, 7,000 people. But in 2010, the population increased to 13,750. So here are my 2 points. Let's find my slope. 13,750 minus 7,000 over 2010 minus 1990. If I subtract on the top, I would get 6,750. In the denominator, I would get 20. 6,750 divided by 20 is 337.5. But because we're dealing with people, we can't have 0.5 of a person. So the best answer is B. Find the equation of a line that has a slope of 0 and passes through this point. You may want to draw a picture. Okay, I shall. Let me graph the point 4, 5. 4, 5. So this is the point. So this line has to pass through that point and have a slope of 0. Well, what kind of line has a slope that exists, but it has no steepness? Well, a horizontal line does. So a horizontal line that goes through that point would look like this. And the equation of that line has to be y equals 5 because it hits the y-axis at 5. So my answer is D. Number 20. Find the slope and the y-intercept of this line. Well, this one is currently in standard form. And as you know, standard is ax plus by equals c. If we want the slope, we want m. If we want the y-intercept, we want b. Neither of those letters are currently lowercase b, and m are not in this equation. So we need to change forms. So I know that y equals mx plus b has both letters. So what we need to do is transform this equation to be y equals mx plus b, or solve for y. So we have negative 4y equals negative 2x plus 12. Divide everything by negative 4. If I do that and simplify, I get y equals negative 2 divided by negative 4 is a positive. 2/4 is the same as 1/2 x. 12 divided by negative 4 is negative 3. So this is my equation, but it asks what's the slope and the y-intercept. Well, this one says slope of 2, so that's wrong. Negative 2 is wrong. Slope of 1/2 and a y-intercept of negative 3. My answer is C. All right, guys, I'm going to continue with number 21 on video number 3. Thanks.